Ah, look at those pearly whites. I just got back from the dentist. First time I've been in quite a while because, the American healthcare system is very good. But I'm happy to report my teeth are all good. I gotta go back for another cleaning because, they just like me so much. But I'm a little disappointed because they didn't give me a pencil or a sticker to which I am accustomed. So, word to the wise out there, if you yourself are a dentist, you have a practice, don't stop giving people pencils with little orange teeth on them just because they're, close to their 40s. I still enjoy those things. Hey everybody, it's your old pal Mike. I hope you're happy, healthy, and safe, and welcome back to the channel because I've got a quick tip for you. Now, if you happen to frequent the internet, message boards, gear pages, etc., then you'll probably know that it's très chic to criticize the Gibson 3-3 headstock as a design flaw, to say that these guitars do not stay in tune, and whether you've got a Les Paul, an SG, a 335, a J45, any of those things, well, there's just no helping it. They're flawed. They don't work. Orville Gibson was a madman. Oh, but friends, I cannot abide such slander, such malicious talk, because honestly, truly, it's not the headstock shape's fault. You see, the 3-3 headstock, I don't think it's a design flaw at all. It's just a design choice. It's a way of doing things, and it happens to be a very good way of doing things, in my humble opinion. For one, the Gibson 3-3 headstock has a good amount of tilt back built in, which eliminates the need for string trees or other devices to increase downward force on the nut. I don't think I've ever played a Gibson guitar where the strings were just popping out of the nut, but all things being equal and in good shape, the strings just stay put in these headstocks, so I like that a lot. And I also think it's quite attractive, but I don't really resonate with the idea that it's a flaw, or that just because you've got a 3-3 headstock, you're doomed to a poor tuning experience. That simply isn't so. Friends, in my experience as a guitar tech of over a decade or 2 decades at this point, hell, I've been doing this since high school. Not very well in high school, mind you, but I got better. In my experience, 85% of tuning issues on a Gibson instrument, it actually comes from a poorly cut nut. That is almost always the case. In far fewer instances, it's, poor stringing technique or a bad tuner, something along those lines. But the nut is the most crucial component when it comes to keeping your Gibson guitar in tune. Now, I happen to be a very big fan of Gibson overall, but much has been said over the years about quality control. And when it comes to quality control overall, I can think of so few areas where it is as plainly obvious that not enough time is being spent on each instrument than the nut. Often from the factory, the nut slots are very shallow, or they are cut completely straight, not following the string path from the bridge to the nut to the tuners. And that string path is so important when it comes to getting these guitars playing the way that they should. On the bench in front of me is a 1977 Gibson Les Paul. It is a fantastic guitar belonging to my friend Tony, who I've mentioned a few times on the channel. And if you look at any Gibson 3-3 headstock, what you'll see is exactly this. Strings which flow relatively straight from the bridge, and when they hit the nut, they veer off at an angle to meet each string's respective tuner. Now, in theory, this should work just fine, but if you're not cutting the nut properly, this can spell disaster for tuning stability. To help me illustrate my point, I've got a nut blank clamped in a vise over here on my right that's going to help me show you exactly what I mean when I say a properly cut nut slot. I do what I'm about to show you on every single Gibson 3-3 instrument that I work on, and it works every time. Now, what you're seeing here is a nut blank that I've got clamped in a vise with some string positions already marked. They're very rough, they're not exact, because I'm not going to use this on a guitar. This is just for illustration purposes. And because nut blanks are always a lot taller than they need to be, well, I'll be able to use this again down the road, so no worries. The first thing I'm going to do when I'm cutting a Gibson nut is I'm just going to rough in my string positions. And again, I'm not aiming for perfection here. Forgive me, this vise isn't perfectly clamped down. That's good enough. widen the thicker strings just a little bit. That's good enough. But it's occurring to me that you probably can't see these very well. So what we're going to do is we're going to color the top just to make it a lot easier. So I've got it colored in. I'm going to cut these slots again real quick just to... Oh yeah, that'll work just fine, I think. So we've got some roughed in slots. Right? That should be pretty good. Because as I mentioned, the strings are coming straight from the bridge and are going to need to meet their tuner at an angle. Let me use some abrasive cord to demonstrate since we're working on nut slots. Now, you'll see the string is coming in straight from the bridge, but to meet its tuner, it's going to have to veer off at an angle. This is terrible for tuning stability because the string has to bend so drastically to meet its tuner that it's got this harsh corner to navigate now. So what I like to do when I am cutting a nut slot, and I'll grab the appropriate file for a D string, what I like to do, using a 32 here, is I gently curve my nut slot. You can see that as I'm cutting, I'm not just paying attention to depth or width, I'm making sure that this path does exactly what the string needs to. So when it comes from the bridge and hits the nut, it's got somewhere to go. That is a much gentler curve for the string to navigate as it's flowing to its tuner, and this helps every single time. And not just on the D string. If I get my 20 file, which is appropriate for the G that I'm using, I can do the same thing. I'm just gently curving as I slot. And again, got the G string coming in, hitting an angle. Oh yeah. Flowing right to its tuner, uninhibited. It's just got a gentle curve to navigate instead of a harsh angle. This is exactly what you want to do if you're cutting a nut for a Gibson 3-in-3 instrument. Now, if you look closely at the Les Paul I've been working on, you'll see that actually every string has just a little bit of angle and curve built into its slot. The E, for example, does have just a little bit of a curve built in because that string needs to meet its tuner, and its tuner happens to be just a little off-center. So I gently curved it as I cut. The A string also bends a little bit, so I made sure to build just a little bit in. Not too much. Doesn't need to be overcurved, lest I introduce yet another angle for it. But it looks relatively like that. The G we've already talked about, but the B also, just like the A string, does indeed have a little bit of a curve built in. And again, not too much because it's not as drastic a curve as what the G requires. But the B, yeah, could just use a little bit of help. And the E string, now I've just basically angled it and not curved it too much because its tuner is also a little off center for the string, and it doesn't really need a whole lot of extra help. It's staying in tune just fine. So this is kind of reflective of what I've got going on the Les Paul behind me. Now I hope that you can see this and that it's making sense to you. This is just the quickest visual aid I could come up with on short notice. It was a last-minute video idea, but I thought it important to talk about gently curving your nut slots so that you're getting the best possible tuning experience. And just so you're able to actually see this put into practice, here is the nut that I cut for this great 77 Les Paul. And as you can see, the D and G both have a nice, gentle curve that allows them to flow uninhibited toward their tuners. The A and B have a gentle curve as well, but it's not as drastic. And the E's, while a lot straighter, still have just a little bit of an angle built in to allow them to flow to their tuners. Again, this is what I do to every 3-in-3 Gibson headstock that I work on, and it works every single time. So now that I've explained how I cut a nut on a Gibson 3-in-3 headstock, I'd like you to hear the results, because I think you'll be surprised by just how well this guitar stays in tune. For your information, this guitar is strung with Ernie Ball regular slinkies, that's 10 to 46, with what I would call very low and very breezy action. This guitar came in from Tony for a complete refret, and I am so happy that we did that because it plays so much better than it did with the old, worn-out, flat-as-hell frets. This guitar is otherwise mostly original, although it has had its pickups replaced with DiMarzio's. For sure, a super distortion in the bridge, but the neck, I'm not quite sure what it is. Both sound great. All in all, I love this guitar. I am so happy with how it came out, how it plays now, compared to what it was when it first came in. And you know, I gotta admit that I'm not a big fan of the Cherry Sunburst, but holy crap, I have fallen in love with this guitar, so yeah, big fan. And you know what? I'll also add, I actually love 70s Gibsons. Now, don't get me wrong. I've played like 11 or 12, 58 through 60 Les Pauls. I have played numerous 60s Gibsons and love them all. They're great. I enjoy the heck out of them, but I don't know. There's something about 70s Gibsons that just works for me. Maybe it's, you know, the affordability, but I don't know, man. I think that there are just as many really great Gibson guitars from the 70s as there are complete duds. So, and you know what? Every era has its duds, so it's important not to focus on the naysaying, and if you get a chance to play a cool 70s Gibson, especially a deluxe, those are my favorites. Love the mini humbuckers. I can't recommend them enough, so give it a shot. Take it from your old pal Mike, the guy who basically only plays Fenders at this point. Now, I hope that you are just as pleased with this guitar's performance as I am, and I cannot say enough nice things about this particular Les Paul Standard. Tony is going to be blown away, both because the thing played like crap when it first came in with its blown out frets, but also because this is just a really solid guitar. In fact, Tony was texting me earlier today wondering if I thought this guitar was too aggressive, and the answer is no. Oh my god, it sounds fantastic. This is such an ideal example, in my book, of what a Les Paul should sound like, even with the replaced pickups, and I could not be happier. There was one other issue that I ran into with this guitar, in that there was some funny business going on with the ground. When this first came in, it was a little noisy, and when I looked in the electronics cavity, I couldn't find the ground I expected, which would be the one run to the treble side stop tail anchor, but it wasn't there. What was there was a ground very suspiciously wired through the bridge pickup cavity to the treble side height adjustment on the bridge, which I did not like to see at all. It was just soldered to the bottom. It was, you know, exposed copper wire. Kind of not what I like to see on a guitar, and it really wasn't functioning to begin with. So I pulled it, I replaced it, I pulled the treble side anchor out of the body, ran a new ground, and make a little channel on the stud itself with a file so that it fits snugly. And I'm happy to report, works perfectly. I feel very good about my brain thinking. So yeah, this repair went beautifully. The frets went beautifully. The nut went beautifully. The whole thing is exactly what I want out of a Les Paul, and I think Tony's going to be really pleased. In any case, I hope this video was actually short, because I say I've got a quick one for you all the time, and it's never quick. But even if this is a little longer than I expected, I hope that this video was somehow informative for those of you who have tuning problems on your Gibson. I'm not going to lie, it absolutely happens. Gibsons can be a little problematic, but I'm telling you, it almost always comes down to the nut. In any case, thank you so much for watching, for liking, for commenting, for subscribing. for sharing, for doing all of that good stuff that the algorithm seems to like. May it be ever in our favor. And a quick shout out to my supporters on Patreon. You all give me life, you keep me going, and I cannot mention enough that our Discord community is amazing. Everyone is throwing in and helping each other. It is welcoming, it is loving, it is a wonderful place to be, and I hope that you consider joining. If you'd like to learn more about how you too can support the channel, click the link in the description down below. Anyway, I'm going to take Tony's Les Paul for a few more spins because I love it? Which is kind of a surprise, but, you know, I love a good Gibson now and then. But in the meantime, I hope that you're taking care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you in the next video.